Hello chess friends, this is International Master Valeri Lilov for chesslecture.com, and today I'd like to talk to you about something very interesting. A lot of chess players have heard about the Grandmaster Tigran Petrosian, and the world champion, and an amazing technical player. What's interesting about his game is that he was able to outplay his opponents with mostly prophylactic moves, by mostly applying a type of strategy that restricts everything. And so he became really famous about that, you know, like real ball constrictor type of play that was further adopted in the games of Anatoly Karpov, and it became such a beautiful way of playing it. So it's really interesting to see how a game could be won by doing nothing else but improving. It looks very easy, it looks very beautiful, and many people try, but you know what? They kind of fail. And that's because literally applying that type of system of restricting the opponent has to be done very carefully, very precisely, and it's not that easy. So I'd like to share with you some really nice suggestions about and interesting secrets on Petrosian's style of play. So let's talk about what I often call as Petrosian's secret. After the moves of c4, knight f6, knight c3, and actually, then basically black played e6, e4, and pawn to d6, after which white continues with pawn to d4. So the structure feels good, and after bishop g7 we have the King's Indian defense, one of the most popular and yet active systems. It's different and yet interesting at the same time. Black just keeps on the development. And so after he played with bishop g7 and white played f3, ultimately black continued with c6 and white carried on with bishop to e3. That is the so-called Bayern system variation. I would say a cagey and evasive method of confronting the Zemish. Black does the best to delay castling in most lines, and ultimately his intention is to play b5 and get ready to challenge or counter against the white center. It could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, it really depends on the situation, but it's kind of interesting anyway. So the question is, what is white supposed to do? Now, there are lots of moves, and you know, many of them seem quite useful. But the move that white decided to do in this position was the move of c5, which I find particularly nice. The reason is because with c5, we're taking control, and the fact is that black cannot that easily get to play with the move of b5, as in case of a move like pawn to b5, there could be the chance of c6 to the b, and this looks good. After the move of c5 by white, Petrosian, as a matter of fact, he played with white, he just tried to prefer the sharp step in reverse for later in the game. This move kind of fixes and restricts in a way the black possibilities, so he can't go with the move of pawn to b5 or anything similar of that matter. So after c5, black castled in the short side like this, and then white did knight g to e2. So things look good in this moment, and then after knight g2, then okay, black plays a5. In this game, black was actually playing with Vizier. Obviously, he was a pretty solid player. I'm not sure what was his title, but it was played in the Nice Olympiad, and obviously playing on such a board on the Olympiad, he must have been a pretty good player. So a5 kind of gives the ability for black to play knight a6, but it's still not good enough. See, still from the very move of pawn to c5, we can get to realize how Petrosian was starting to limit and restrict black's position by cutting off the majority of his pieces. It's a very valuable thing to do. You know, anytime when you have a possibility, you want, as much as you can, to just limit, take out, and restrict your opponent, and mainly his ability to advance or do anything important of that matter. See, so this is exactly what white had in mind. He knew, oh yes, he did. He knew that black is limited. He knew that the fact is that we hold him into a very uncomfortable position. So the worst possible scenario here would be if we just let him to be with his pieces and the pawns. No, we couldn't let that happen. So the move of c5 was the first little start into this position. Now, when that happened, obviously this was a very good thing. The next move is that black does, okay, a5 and c6 to the d6. Sure, the exchange gives white pawn majority. We got 2 versus 1 pawns. And that's something very interesting. See, when you restrict your opponent, you really care about the pawn structure, because pawn structure is ultimately, the pawns are most often the one thing that limits or restricts the opponent. It's not so much the pieces. The piece can create pressure, but you can't create pressure with all those pieces. So even if you create pressure with 1 or 2 of them, the one thing that will really determine what the most valuable result and restriction, limitation to the opponent are the pawns. And so white gets a little more in that position, which is just what he needs and what he wants. After that candidate, so to speak, things look good, and yeah, they definitely surely feel quite all right at this at the given moment. In time, things looks good. So let us see. Okay, after that move, okay, exchange takes back, and then there was knight g3, which was responded by a rook e8 and queen d2. Of course, we need a build-up. No matter whether you actually look at a games of a great master of attack or a great master of the positional chess, you'll always find out something very important, and that's the ability to get a good build-up. Rushing through and then trying to find something special is not going to work. In these positions, what we want is to just be consistent. Be consistent, keep everything together, build it up, and then you're going to get the advantage. White knew that, and he worked for it. So this next move, queen to d2, surely felt the right one to play. And after that, of course, black had to continue with b5, and then white continues with bishop e2. Isn't it amazing to see this the helpful structure that white has? The e4 pawn is great. It's keeping most of black's pieces behind, and although he's trying his best in order to provide some actual activity on the queen side, it will take him a long time to prepare and get ready. While for white, it took only a move or two, as he has everything stable, including that center, which just feels pretty well defended and safe. So from this point of view, he surely did not have to worry about anything. After the move of b5, bishop e2, black did d5. Now, of course, there was a way to play b4 and then knight to the d7, most likely. But he didn't go that way, because after rook c1, bishop b7, and short castles, white would have had a very, very good position. So that's why after bishop e2 happened, black played d5 in hope that he could probably open the position up. Now, we don't want, no matter what, we do not want to give up on the bishops or something. So what white decided to do was the move of e5, and it was a very fair and a good continuation. After this candidate, surely he's got to take an action for that f6 knight. So moving it back was it seemed to be the only way to go. Knight d7, and what is the best move for white at this point? I suggest you to take a moment and try to think about this. If you were playing with the white pieces, what is it the one thing